Greetings, everyone, and welcome to our series of In Conversation, a series that we're running at the Galway Film Flower for 2020. I'm delighted to be talking to the distinguished, multi-talented and multi-awards winning actor Keith Carradine. His significant body of work includes theatre, film, television, songwriting, singing. He has 2 albums under his belt, and he's also enjoyed considerable success in musical theatre, winning, I think, a Drama Desk nomination and a Tony nomination for playing the lead in the Will Rogers Follies. And that's extraordinary. I don't know many actors who've done all those different genres. His breakthrough appearance in film was, of course, with the great director Robert Altman in McCabe and Mrs. Miller, and the iconic Nashville, for which, or before, I think at the alarmingly youthful age of 19, he wrote the song I'm Easy, which he then performed in what I think is one of the most extraordinary scenes in the film. And it went on to win him an Oscar for Best Song. What else? Well, he's been kind enough to let us use I'm Easy on our trailer this year, which you'll see. And he's also agreed to be on the panel of judges for our Oscar-accredited animation shorts category. So for all these reasons and many, many more, I'm delighted to be in conversation with Keith Carradine. Hi, Keith.
Hello, Kate. That was a bit over the top, I think. But thank you so much for doing such thorough research.
Oh well, listen. Welcome to Galway.
Well, I'm delighted to be virtually in Galway.
Exactly. Yes, I'm raising a glass to you. Cheers.
Oh, it's a different time of day where I am, so I'm having coffee.
Right, time difference. Very sensible. I first saw you on Broadway in Foxfire.
Wow.
Yes, with Jessica Tandy and Hume Cronin.
Yes.
And I have to say that it is one of the most standout productions I've ever seen in a lifetime of going to the theatre.
It was a wonderful evening of theater, and I was privileged to be a part of it. And in fact, I've often said that, you know, when I had first decided as a 17-year-old high school student in my senior year of high school, I had made up my mind that I was going to go into my father's profession. And having made up my mind to do that, I decided that the proper thing to do, and I wrote my father a letter about this, and I said, what I want to do is I want to apply to and see if I can get into the Royal Academy in London and study properly and learn my craft, you know, at the feet of masters. And so that was my effort. That was my desire. It didn't happen for me. And I've always said that the next best thing that I had to actually having gone to the Royal Academy was spending a couple of years in performance, actually 11 months on Broadway, and then a couple of other productions with Hume Cronin and Jessica Tandy on that stage. And it was a lesson every night to be out there with them. And I'm delighted to hear that you saw it. It was a wonderful, wonderful.
It was very exciting. I had just moved to America and I had just started at the Yale School of Drama. And one of the teachers there kept saying that we had to go and see Foxfire because of the performances. And a bunch of us got together and got on the train at New Haven, got off at Grand Central. And for the first time ever, we were on Broadway and eating hot dogs and looking at all the theatre marquees and getting our tickets and then seeing you. And to me, it was revelatory because I hadn't seen much American theatre. And I loved...
So that was actually your first trip to Broadway.
Yeah.
So we were your first Broadway experience.
Yeah, I think I was brought when I was a child, but that's not the same as, you know.
No, it wouldn't be.
No, it was very, very exciting. And I thought the writing was so wonderful as well. It was so poetic. And I really hadn't seen much American drama up until then. And I didn't realize that it could be like that. You know, it was poetic and almost Chekhovian, you know, that longing for things that have
Yes.
faded and wanting to go back and not
Yes.
being able to, all that. It's just extraordinary. And all of you
Well,
were just superb.
oh, thank you so much. I'm so glad you saw it. It really was an amazing time in my life to have been invited into that group and
Mm.
been able to play with those
Oh,
people.
it must have been a delight. Yes.
Truly delightful. And Jessica, it's interesting. She and Hume were such an extraordinary team, and they did so many wonderful things together. There was a magic that happened between the two of them, and she was so gifted.
Mm.
And I remember every night there was a moment where she would go into a reverie, and she would do kind of a twirl on the stage, and she had this long sort of billowy skirt, and when she would spin, it was she was going back to being a teenager, and when they were first courting one another, and I think she was imagining that they were at a dance together.
Mm.
And every night I watched her do that.
Mm.
And because of the way the sets had been constructed and designed, there was a lot of Georgia red clay that had been brought in and was sort of scattered about the stage, and it was dry and a bit dusty, and it had particles of mica in it. And every night when
That's
she would
what it was.
spin, oh
Yeah.
yeah, every night when she would spin and become 17, she would be surrounded by all of this sparkle, and it
Yes.
was absolutely magical. And
Magical is the word.
yeah,
I thought it was some kind of glitter put in there or something.
no, it was
Yeah.
just from the actual earth that they had brought in and
Yeah,
scattered
it was
about
very subtle. It was beautiful.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah, wonderful. Yeah. Well, you've worked with the most extraordinarily eclectic group of people I think I've ever come across. I have a list here.
My
Yeah,
list of legends.
it is
I'm quite
amazing.
proud of it.
It is amazing.
One of my greatest disappointments, though, is that your father was top of the tops for me. One of my
Yeah.
heroes,
Oh,
always,
thank you.
as a young actor, and as I went along, and the work that he's left us. What a
Yeah.
legacy! And it's one of my greatest disappointments. Not only that I never got to work with him, but I never got to meet him.
Oh, no. Oh,
Yeah. Yeah,
yeah.
I'm sad to say. I suspect that he and my dad might have had a good conversation had they ever met
Well,
up.
yes, yes. So yeah, we share this in common. Actually, this is what we have in common: is we both have fathers who were Shakespearean actors.
Yes,
Now, your father, I'm fascinated by him because he had his own theatre company. Was he an
he
actor
did.
manager?
He had a Shakespearean repertory company in the 40s.
Yes.
I think he put it together in the mid 40s. It was just after the war, if I remember correctly.
Mhm.
And in fact, that's how he and my mother met. He was actually auditioning actors, and she was a student at the Pasadena Playhouse.
Hmm.
And he went there to audition actors, and she auditioned for his company, and that was that. Not only was she in the company, but
Yeah,
they spent
that's where
years
my
together.
parents met on stage. They were cast
Did,
together in a play. So
were they? Yeah.
yeah, and touring. And yes.
Sometimes the magic it just happens. So
Yeah. So he was in effect an actor manager, was he? Did he? I mean, for how long? I mean, he would have been before
I don't think he managed to keep it going for that long. I think
right.
that it was post-war, and I think financially it was difficult to keep it going.
Yeah.
But he did run it for a little while, and that was his great passion, was the bard. He spent his life working in theater and television and films. Obviously, he had kids, and he had to keep us fed and clothed and a roof
Yeah.
over our heads.
Yes.
But the one thing that he would have wanted to do nothing but was Shakespeare. That was his passion.
Yes. My father also.
Mm.
Yeah. Yeah. He wanted to retire and teach Shakespeare at college.
Ah, well.
Yes. Yeah.
The students would have been very fortunate.
Yes. So getting back to your father, though, he then he was iconic in the movies too. So I didn't even realize that Cecil B. DeMille also had a stock company, and your father was a member of that.
Yes, he appeared in a number of DeMille's films, and he was obviously also a member of the John Ford stock company.
Yes, yes.
All of those John Ford movies. It's interesting how he and DeMille met. in fact, because my father was, he had studied under William Chester French, the sculptor who had done the bust of Lincoln and the Lincoln Memorial.
Oh, right.
My father studied with him and became quite an accomplished portrait sculptor. And when he first arrived in California, he made his way across the country. This was in the early 30s. He made his way across the country doing sketches of people. And his deal was it was $1 a sketch. And if he sketched your likeness, if you didn't approve of it, you didn't have to pay. And he was very proud of the fact that no one ever stiffed him.
Oh.
Everyone paid for the sketch. And then he got to Hollywood and he was commissioned to do a bust of DeMille. And it was when DeMille was sitting for, he sat for him a couple of times while my father worked on, put together the armature and the clay and everything. And DeMille heard his speaking voice and asked him if he was an actor. And my father said, well, yes, I am. And DeMille said, I have a film I would like to do. And my father could be a terrible snob. And he said, his response to DeMille was, he says, I'm a theater actor. And but somehow I guess they got past that moment, and his first speaking role in a film was in Sign of the Cross for DeMille.
Okay, well, he's got an amazing CV. I was looking, he's got incredible. He was in Stagecoach.
Yes,
which is unforgettable. At the Grapes of Wrath, the preacher in Grapes of Wrath, the extraordinary performance. 10 Commandments, Around the World in 80 Days, big epics, all the way through to Vampire Hookers, Astro Zombies, and Sex Kittens Go to College.
Yes.
That's a real actor's resume.
Oh my God, he ran the gamut. Yeah.
Yeah. So
he used to be very proud of the fact he would say, I've been in some of the best films ever made and some of the worst.
Yes.
So,
yes. A proper actor. And I'm sure Yes, I'm sure if you asked him, what attracted him to the part, he would say, well, the money.
Well, of course, absolutely.
Lives, habits, everything.
Yeah. How are you going to pay for the drink if you don't work?
Exactly. Yeah. Did you ever?
Did your dad have films that he thought were particularly dreadful that he'd been a part of?
Oh yes, lots.
Really?
Increasingly, as he became older, he found that as he got older and wiser, the directors got younger and stupider.
Funny how that works.
Yeah, sure. I mean, being in turkeys is all part and parcel of it, really.
Indeed, yeah.
Did you ever get to work with him?
My dad.
Yeah.
I did several times, yeah. The first time I actually worked with him, I had been in, my first job was in the Broadway cast of Hair. And then I did that for a year, and then I came back to California. And it was around that time that I did a movie. I did my first film, which was a Western called A Gunfight with Kirk Douglas and Johnny Cash.
Yes, was that your film debut with Johnny Cash?
That was my film debut.
And his too, right?
And Johnny Cash's, yes. I'm very proud of the fact that we both made our first film appearance together. He was, of course, already a legend, and I was, of course, this greenhorn. But and then having done that, somewhere along in there, I met Altman about doing McCabe and Mrs. Miller, and he had told me basically that he wanted me to play the part. And at the same time, my dad, he would regularly go and do regional theater. And one of his favorite pieces that he would pull out of his trunk was Tobacco Road. And there was a role in Tobacco Road, and he played Jeter Lester in Tobacco Road hundreds of times. And he put together one of his favorite casts. Georgia Simmons was one of them. I can't remember who played Bess. I've forgotten her name now. But he invited me to come and join him and play Dude, which I did. And this was at a dinner theater in Jacksonville, Florida.
Yes.
And needless to say, well, I had never been on the stage with my dad.
Right.
So I was quite anxious about that.
Yeah.
And I had never done, I'd done some theater in college, but this was, and having been on Broadway for a year in Hair, I had that experience, but I had never done dinner theater.
Yeah, so that's a law unto itself. It's a strange beast.
It's a strange beast. Yeah. And you're out there performing, and it was sort of this arena stage kind of setting, but they're all sitting at tables. Yes. And there are waiters, and they're bringing them food and drink, and so you're playing the play in front of a restaurant.
Yes.
where they're not stopping to eat, and they're not stopping to eat and drink while you're playing the play. So it was a really odd experience, and it was an exercise in not only craft but self-discipline. I mean, you have to be able to stay focused and to continue to give a performance under those circumstances. It's really an odd form.
Yeah, tough as hell.
So that was my first time working with my dad. Then he came and he did a small part in a little wacky movie that I did called Grasslands, which has since been retitled a number of times, and I'm not even sure what it's called now. It's findable. It had this sort of wonderful cast of all of us who were up and comers at that point. I was in it: Gary Busey, Robert Walker Jr., Scott Glenn. It was this wacky movie that was set out in the prairie, in the grasslands of the Dakotas, or just after the turn of the century, just after the First World War. And there's a sequence where we're the world's first motorcycle gang, and we ride into this town on these vintage Harleys and Indians and such, and we're sort of raising hell in this town. And there's this aged gunfighter who decides to come out and confront us and stop us from the rabble rousing that we're doing. And my dad came and played that part. So I worked with him on in dinner theater, and then again he came and played that part in this little movie that I did. And then he worked with David, obviously, a number of times, and on Kung Fu, I think he did a couple of episodes of that. Right. And all of us, David and I, joined him. We surprised him on the set of, he was doing an episode of The Fall Guy. I think it was The Fall Guy, the Lee Majors television show, and they were doing a Halloween episode. So they invited Dad, to come and play some role because of his history in monster films and his background of the macabre. And they invited David and I to come and surprise him on set, which we did.
Great. Yeah, well, you named a few of the people you've worked with, and I want to read out this list because it's mad. It's fabulous. Lee Marvin.
Yeah, he was a pal.
Yeah, was he?
Yeah, we stayed friends. He was great. What a great guy.
Oh, fantastic.
Yeah.
Ernest Borgnine. Sam
Yes,
Shepard.
Ernie and I stayed friends. We both met on that same film, and Ernie and I stayed friends. In fact, I saw him the night he passed.
Really?
He was a sweet, sweet soul. Yeah.
Oh, that's Well, Sam Shepard.
Yes.
Vanessa Redgrave.
For Sam Shepard, not with, but for. I did his play.
Which play?
A Lie of the Mind.
Okay, right.
Yeah.
So did he direct it, or?
No. Ethan Hawke directed that production. We did it at the Acorn in off Broadway, and it was quite celebrated, that production. And there's something about Shepard's, his ear, his sense of America. And it's interesting that I've always found it very comfortable what Sam writes about and the way he wrote about it. And Ethan, in fact, when Ethan and I were working together on that play, he said, listen, he said, you need to do every play he's written. You should make it a goal of yours to perform in all of his plays. And in fact, at one point, my brother David and I were going to try and do a production of True West.
Which is my favorite.
It's a fabulous play.
Yes, I would crawl on broken glass to go and see it anywhere. I'd go and see an amateur production. I would go anywhere to see that.
It's quite brilliant. Yeah. And his ear, his sense of his ability to capture sort of the underbelly of the American psyche. I mean, he was, I miss him. Sorry he's gone.
Yeah. I think you were in Deadwood.
Yeah.
And that also has that kind of poetry, the use of language in Deadwood was one of the many things that I thought were absolutely impeccable about this series.
David Milch, he's a mad genius, and he's fading now. He's apparently in late stages of Alzheimer's. That's tragic, because what a mind! I mean, oh my gosh! And what he gave us to speak. Yes. We actors, that's all we want to do.
Yeah,
just give me. I'm not as smart as you can make me sound. Please make me sound smarter than I am.
Right. Yeah.
and give me the gift of beautiful words to speak,
Exactly. Yes.
and I will do everything in my power to rise to the occasion if you'll give
Yes.
me the chance,
Yes. Yes.
and that's what Milch did in that. I mean, it was quite extraordinary what he wrote, and the
Yeah.
language was it was it was absolutely poetry. It
Yeah.
was kind of an American sort of Shakespeare, if you will.
Exactly.
Uh,
Exactly. I was going to say very, very Shakespearean.
yeah,
Yes. Yeah.
and the things that he gave us to say, and oh my God, and when you put that stuff in the hands of an Ian McShane, for
Mm,
example, I mean,
mm.
that was a great experience. Great to be a part of that.
I'm sure. Yeah. And were you aware at the time that you were on something special? Because I don't think I've ever seen anything like it on television. It was so rich in every detail, the depth of the vision, the layers. I mean, it looked as though it should be on the big screen.
Well, absolutely, and I think we did
Everything
all have
about it was extraordinarily rich.
I do think we all had a sense that we were being given the opportunity, that we were a part of something unique, and sort of over the edge, something that was something that the results of which the sum of which were the results were greater than the sum of the parts, if you will. There was a
Right.
magic about it,
Yes. Oh, for
and
sure.
I think we all had a sense of that as we were working together.
Okay.
There was also it was chaotic because of David Milch's work ethic.
Process. Yes.
His process was really, it was challenging, and
Right.
I wasn't there very long. I mean, I was killed in episode 4, so I didn't spend that much time there. And a lot of people said that was merciful, actually, that I didn't have to experience what it
Oh,
became,
right.
because it
Okay.
became quite difficult. People would arrive for work, and there would be they wouldn't have pages. They wouldn't even know what stage to go to. They wouldn't know what was going to be shot, let alone how to prepare for
Oh,
it, because David hadn't arrived with the work yet, or the pages. So
yeah. Where are the words?
yeah,
Where
well,
are
they
the
they
words?
were they were in his extraordinary brain, and
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
yeah,
You mentioned Ethan Hawke earlier
yes.
as a director, and I'm curious to know how you found working with a director who is also an actor. Did it make a
You
difference?
know, I've had that experience a few times,
Oh,
and I find that actors who direct, when they're good, they're really good.
mm-hmm.
And I was directed in The Ballad of the Sad Cafe with Vanessa,
Mm.
by
Yeah.
Simon Callow.
Yes,
You know,
wonderful
and,
Simon Callow.
oh
Yes.
my gosh, and what he gave me on a daily basis, I can't, and Ethan was the same, and an actor directing other actors who so well understands what we all go through as actors, what our demons might be,
Yeah.
what the things might be that might keep us from getting to another level.
Mhm.
And I've worked with a few directors who were able to absolutely make me much better than
Mm.
I was before they added to what I was doing.
Right.
And Ethan is certainly he's a really smart guy, and he's
Mm.
quite literate, and he's a writer as well as an actor and a
Sure.
director, and his sense of the whole, I thought, was magnificent, and
Mm.
I thought he so well understood the play, and he was such such a fan of Sam's writing and his work,
Yeah. Yeah.
and all he wanted to do was live up to what Sam had written, and he did quite extraordinarily. Um, he was an odd guy, and he could be difficult himself,
Sure.
and um, there was a moment when he came and saw our first preview on the finished set,
Mm-hmm.
or it might have been a first run through. Anyhow, he didn't like the set.
Oh God. Yes.
He didn't like what had been constructed for us to play the play in.
Yeah.
And it was quite brilliant, because it's a play, it's a lie of the mind. I mean, it's about aphasia and this idea of what's in your brain,
Yeah.
and trying to sift through the clutter in your mind to maintain some sense of coherence, and to pursue, a life.
Yeah.
And what this set designer built was basically, are you familiar with the artist Cornell, who made these things called
Sure.
Cornell boxes?
Yes.
Well, he
Yes.
basically made a giant Cornell box.
And this is what you had been rehearsing in. This was your
It's what
set.
we've been rehearsing, and it was what we were
Yes.
playing the play in front of, and it was the
Right.
perfect metaphor for what
Yeah.
the play was about. And
Mhm.
Sam was a black box guy. I mean, he thought my words, my words are enough, and you don't need anything.
There
You
you go.
don't, you just stand there and speak these words to one another. And so he found the set to be a distraction from
Yeah.
his point of view. Well, then we got this absolute love letter from the New York Times, and
Did you
and
change the set? I mean, what
no,
happened?
no, yeah, we
Oh,
couldn't.
because
Oh
I
no.
worked with a director who threw out the set on the
Oh
first
my
day.
God. Oh no.
Threw it
Well,
away.
this fortunately this was
I thought
Ethan.
you were
This
going to say
wasn't
he tore it down.
No, fortunately, Sam, he carped about it and left in a huff, and and
Yeah.
and never came back.
Never.
Yeah,
But you got
yeah.
rave reviews. He must have been
We
happy with
got
it,
the absolute love letter from the New York Times. We were
right?
it was a complete sellout. People who said they could always get a ticket to anything because they have connections, even they couldn't get in. It was rather satisfying.
Brilliant. Yes.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. Great. Do you have a preference for any genre, or are you equally at home in musicals, theatre, films, or television? Are you equally comfortable everywhere, or do you find them
I
different?
would say that I am equally comfortable in any of those genres, any of those forms. Um, my love is theater. That's where I'm happiest.
Mhm.
It's also what I get to do the least.
Right.
But the immediacy of that, there is such an ancient essence to theater. It's something we've been doing as humans for millennia, and there's a magic to that, and a sense of connection that one has when you're playing the play with people in the room. And right now, in this awful time, we're not able to do that. Well, how
No,
tragic
I
is
know.
that? I mean,
It's just heartbreaking. I can't see.
that's a great tragedy,
Yeah.
and I hope we can get past this before too long, because
Yes.
it's such an essential part of our lives as
Yes.
human beings.
Or if this carries on, we go outdoors, amphitheaters. We go back to
Well,
that.
but the Globe was outdoors to begin with, wasn't it?
Yeah, exactly.
So I mean, we're just going back to or you
Exactly.
look at the Greek amphitheaters
There you
from
go.
the ancient. I mean, that it was always outdoors.
Yeah. Yeah.
Probably. I mean, if you want to see a proper production of Aeschylus, you should probably see it outdoors, shouldn't you? I mean,
Exactly. Yes. So maybe that's what's ahead of us.
yeah, but
Yeah.
I have to say, I love the theater. Musicals, that's a very special. It's such an odd form,
Yeah, it is.
and the suspension of disbelief that is required to enjoy a musical. It's particularly demanding, I think, and there are those. I mean, I have friends with whom I've worked. Taya Leone. She has never. She's quite straight about it. She said, I don't get musical theater. I just
Yeah.
and I remember Gary Busey. He came to see me when I was doing the Will Rogers Follies, and he came and saw that, and he said afterwards, he got it, but he said that it was difficult for him to relate to that form because it's so artificial.
Yes.
And because of his desire for realism, and particularly realism in film acting, and all that entails and requires, the idea of a musical was so alien to him, and I
Did you
think
bring him over? Did he get it?
well, he did get it, yes, and there was a bit that I did in the show that I was only able to do because it was something he taught me when we were doing that movie way back when, which is a rhythm exercise called a ham bone. It's
Okay.
and Gary Busey taught me that. It's an old country
What is
rhythm
it
trick.
again? What are you doing? You're hitting.
It's called a ham bone.
Yeah.
If I were back far enough, but basically I'm using my hand and I'm slapping my thigh and up to my chest, so it's.
Okay.
Yeah, if you could see me full, but you look it up, Google it. You'll see what the ham bone is, and because I did that in the show, I think it touched Gary a little bit. It was a bit of an homage to him. So
Lovely. Lovely.
But it's interesting about musical theater, although I love to do it because when it works, it's amazing. You know,
Yes.
it's amazing. And the fact that I, am able to carry a tune, that helps.
Yeah.
Um,
I
and
sometimes find myself transported in the middle of a musical, like Guys and Dolls or something.
oh
And
my gosh,
all I can think is, what are we human beings made of
yeah,
that we come up with
yes,
this joyful, extraordinary, artificial, and yet so real
yes.
art
Well,
form?
and I think I remember saying to Gary at the time, I said, just remember what Picasso said: art is a lie that enables us to see the truth.
Exactly.
And
Exactly.
so think
That's
of it
it.
that way.
Yeah.
I mean, this
Sure.
is false. This is artificial. This is a,
Yes.
I mean, human beings have created this artificial form, but what is inside of it, what is underneath it, is our essence.
Yeah.
And it enables us to sort of capture our essence in a very complete way.
Hmm.
And then there's music itself, which is my other passion.
Yes.
And the fact that I've been a songwriter in my life, uh, you know uh, I've had occasion back in the day when I had a couple of records and I was out touring and I was playing with a band and I was playing clubs around the country, and
What was your band?
it was just my band. We didn't have a name. Although when it was just Keith Carradine, and
Yeah.
although when we played the Roxy on Sunset Boulevard, and I remember I had him put up on the marquee, Keith Carradine and his all girl band, e- even though there were no women in the band.
I love it.
But I
Yes.
thought it might be an enticement.
Yes.
So,
Yes.
uh, uh, um, but to actually play music with other people, um, there's a magic to that. Music is so universal.
Mm.
You don't have to. You don't have to. You don't have to speak the same language to hear and feel music.
Mm-hmm.
And it just cuts right to your soul. Especially if it's good. And I don't know, it's hard for me to think of music, any kind of music, being bad, but there's
Yeah.
music
Well,
that is more appealing to us for whatever reason.
right. Well, speaking of music, you
Yes,
have also, extraordinarily, you are featured in Madonna's video of Material Girl.
yes,
That's amazing. What was that like?
really strange.
Yeah.
uh, well, for whatever reason, they were out and they had this idea. They wanted to pay homage to Howard Hughes in a way. So that's
I
sort
didn't
of who
get
I was. That's who I was modeling myself on. I had a beard at the time, and not nearly the beard I've grown now during this Corona quarantine. Yeah.
Yeah,
Mm.
Corona hair.
There you go. Yeah.
Yeah.
I said, sure, I'll be a part of that. They came to me and asked me if I would do it, and I said absolutely. And I went to and I did. I think it was 3 days work. I think we were on the Radford lot. No, we were on the old RKO lot in Hollywood. I think was where we shot it. I think that eventually became Coppola's studio. I think he occupied that for a while. Anyhow, we were on the soundstage there where she was paying homage to Marilyn and doing the diamonds are a girl's best, that sort of routine.
Yes.
And I remember I was trying to be congenial, and we're working together and we're doing this thing. And I said to her,
Right.
early on, I said, "Oh, there's a great song." She said, "It's a terrible song,"
Did she?
which made me feel really stupid right away.
Oh
So
God.
yeah. Oh well.
Right. Wow. Yeah. And you also, I'm thinking of these music videos and music, you were also in that film of Yellow Submarine, weren't
Oh
you?
no, we did Sgt Pepper.
Sergeant Pepper, sorry. Yes.
Sergeant Pepper, yes,
Yes.
I was a part of the
The
big
one I
chorus
thought
on the
you were doing.
bleachers at the end of Sergeant Pepper. Yes.
Yes.
Now that is a particular feather in my cap, because there are those who consider it among the worst films ever made. So, and the fact that I got to have that as in my list of credits, and especially when you look at that group of people on that bleacher
It's
singing the
crazy.
refrain at it's insane.
Who is not there? You've got
It's so nuts. I think I was right behind Carol Channing.
Yes, she was in it. George Burns was in
Yeah,
it.
yeah,
I mean, yeah.
everybody.
It was hilarious.
It
Yeah,
was really, really bizarre.
yeah.
But I mean, at that time, I mean, how do you say no to doing anything that was a part of the Beatles, you know,
Absolutely. Yeah.
and the Bee Gees? And I mean,
Yeah.
it's crazy.
Yeah. Yeah. We have another mutual friend who we both worked with, and that's Albert Finney.
Ah, Albert.
Darling, dear departed Albie. Yeah.
I was really sad when he left, you know, because he was a friend too. I mean, we didn't spend a lot of time together, but we had worked together, and I had visited him on a set or two when I knew he was around, and he was just the best guy, the best guy.
He was, yeah.
And I first met Albert. It's fun, so funny. This is a good one.
Yeah.
I first met Albert. I was brought to Paris. I had done Thieves Like Us with Robert Altman, and the film was shot by a wonderful French cinematographer named Jean Bufti. And Bufti went back to Paris with his wife Ghislaine, and they had a friend in Michel de Broca. Philippe de Broca's. So there's something scrolling up here. I don't know what that is. Oh, there it went away. Okay. That was odd. Anyhow, I got a phone call. I was living in Laurel Canyon, and it was sometime after Thieves Like Us, months or so, something later. And I got a phone call, and this French accented woman said, Keith Carradine. And I said, yes. She said, I am Michel de Broca, and my friend is Jean Bufti, and he has told me that you speak French very well. And I said, Ms. de Broca, I'm not at all sure why Jean would have said that. I don't speak any French. I mean, he taught me a couple of words while we were working together, but no, I don't speak French. Absolutely not. She said, well, she said, no matter. Would you like to come and do our film? We can teach you.
Very nice.
I said, okay. And, you know, to quote Kurt Vonnegut, peculiar travel suggestions are dancing lessons from God. So I went with it.
Right.
And I wound up in Paris. And one evening in Paris, I went out to dinner. Michelle said, I will pick you up. She picked me up. She had a little Citroën du Chevaux. And she picked me up and took me to this dinner. She said, I'm going to have dinner with a dear friend. And we went and sat down and had this dinner with this delightful guy. And we had a wonderful time and chatted about all sorts of things. And he was obviously British and just great. And afterwards, I was driving with Michelle, and I said, what was your friend's name again? She said, that was Albert Finney. I did not realize that I was having dinner with Albert because he so disappeared when he acted.
Yeah.
And I didn't recognize that was Tom Jones was his, you know,
Sure.
I mean, he, you know, and so that was the first time we met. And I reminded him of that when we did the Duelists.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. And he remembered, and he said, really? He said, I said, Albert, I'm so glad I didn't say at some point, you know, I didn't say something really stupid. You know, I basically, I knew enough to just keep my mouth shut and listen, you know, plus old saw, you know, if you're talking, you're not learning. So, you know.
Yeah. Yeah. So did you do anything else with him apart from the Duelists?
No, the Duelist was the only time we worked together, you know.
Okay. Yeah.
But I did visit him on set. He was shooting something down on the beach. I can't remember what the movie was. And somebody said, Albert's working down there. Let's go say hi. And so we went down, drove down, and it was an open set. And you know, it was, I think they were on the beach, like by Point Dume or something.
Okay. Yeah.
And we sat around a bit, and there's a quote of Albert's that I've never forgotten, because we were sitting talking about it, you know, and I said, you having a good time? And he said, well, you know, he said, yeah, I'm having a wonderful time. But, you know, it's film acting. It's a bit like flying an airplane, you know, it's long periods of boredom interspersed with moments of sheer panic.
Yes. Yes. He is absolutely on the money. Yes.
Yeah. Yeah.
That is great. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So you learned.
And when we were doing the Duelists, by the way, because we shot his stuff in London, and at the time he was at the National, and he was performing one week after another, alternating between Tamburlaine and Hamlet.
Right. Yeah.
And I didn't get to see his Hamlet, but I did get to see his Tamburlaine, which was 4 hours and a half or something.
Yeah. Phenomenal.
Epic production.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know, and we watched him give this performance, and then we all went back to he and Diana Quick were together at the time, and we all went back to their place, and he proceeded to drink Guinness and port.
Okay.
Until
Guinness is
He
port.
sort of stumbled off to the
Oh, port. Okay.
Guinness and port. What a
Port.
combination.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay. God,
Yeah.
that's a kind of that's a Boilermaker kind of, isn't it? It's
Yeah, he wasn't. He didn't pour them together, but he would have one and then
right.
the
Yeah,
other.
like a yeah.
Yeah,
God. So you learned a little bit of French.
I did.
When you were
I learned it.
shooting.
Well, I had to learn my lines phonetically working on that film. So they assigned a lovely young woman to me who basically I spent days with,
Hmm.
and I was voracious, and I asked all day long, "How do you say this? The first thing I learned how to say was, "How do you say comment se dit?" And I would spend all day asking how to say things, and at the same time, she was teaching my lines phonetically so
Hmm.
that I would be able to actually speak them in the film and know what I was saying.
Yeah, yeah. That's one of the lovely things about acting is that you get to pick up extra skills along the way, things that you
Yes.
might not have. But I've heard it told about you that you are one of the few actors who is such a good horseman that you
Ah,
can get your horse to hit the marks. Is
well,
that
you have to have
true?
a good horse.
Well, that's very modest of you.
No,
But
no, it's true. You
you
do.
love
You have to have.
riding, don't you?
I do love to ride, yes,
Yeah,
and
and you've been a lot in movies.
I grew up with horses, although I didn't really become a horseman until I was a young man. I had this big Palomino when I was 6 years old that used to run off with me on a regular basis, so I was quite terrified, you know. And in fact, at one point he bucked me off, and I wound up on the pavement and split the back of my head open. And they had to rush me off to the doctor and get me stitched up. And the greatest tragedy of that was that I bled all over my Davy Crockett fringe jacket.
Oh
So
no.
I never had that after that.
Oh.
Yeah,
And
it
you
was
never
very sad.
probably had any fear after that. You'd already been thrown and got back on, right?
Well, I've been thrown and got back on, but I was very respectful
Yes.
of the
Of
size
the
and
whole
power of a horse. Yeah.
yes. But
But I didn't really get good at it until I started needing the skill for my work. And I think the first time I was on a horse in front of a camera was on an episode I did of Bonanza. I did a Bonanza.
did you?
I did.
That's great.
Yeah, I did a Bonanza, and
On a
and I
horse.
had this. I had to ride. I had to gallop into this scene with um, I think well they were all there, and Blocker and Lauren Green were in the other thing, and I had to gallop into this scene, and they had to have my double come out and ride in for me because I was bouncing like this in the saddle. I hadn't really got it down yet, but I did after that. And then by the time we were doing the long riders and some other things that I did, um,
You got back.
and then the later stuff that I did with Tom Selleck when we did Monty Walsh, first Last Stand at Saber River, and then we did Monty Walsh. We spent a lot of time on horseback, and that's really how you get comfortable and
Sure. But at
achieve
least,
that
but
sort
at
of.
least you didn't have to lie like a lot of actors do. They say you've got the great part in the great show and it's all
Right.
this money. The only thing is, can you ride a horse? And,
Right. Yeah.
many go, yes.
Yes, of course. Yes,
And
yes.
then,
No, but I have to admit that I have been guilty of that.
no, with
Um,
what?
well, when Francis Coppola was putting together Apocalypse Now, we all wound up. He and Fred Roos and I were all at this film festival in Belgrade, and this was just after Thieves Like Us. And Francis had just spent, I guess, a week or something in Cuba with Fidel Castro, so he was wearing the Castro hat and the fatigues and smoking cigars, and he was full on into his military mode, and
Yeah.
getting ready to gear up and make this epic, you know,
Mm.
movie.
Mm.
And there was a role in it that he and Fred were sort of sitting around saying, "Well, hey, Keith could be good in this part. What do you think?" And they were kind of teasing me with this, and it was to play the surfer, the guy who's the surfer. It wound up being played by Joseph Bottoms, I think, is who played it.
Okay.
But they said, "Do you surf?" And I said, "Oh yeah, absolutely. I didn't surf.
There you go.
No." And I went straight home, and I lived in Topanga at the time, and I bought a surfboard, and I went down to Topanga Beach, and
Yeah.
I spent the next several weeks trying to learn how to surf in a wetsuit in the middle of winter. It was freezing cold,
Ah,
and there I was trying to learn how to surf. I never actually did get any good at it
yeah.
before it turned out that they had decided to move on, and they no longer considered me right for the role, and they hired Joe Bottoms.
Oh, I see. Right. I was going to ask, did you actually have to surf in the end? And, you know,
Never had to face the music on that one. No.
no. Um, your children and your siblings are all in the business too.
Yes.
I mean,
Yes.
all of them. I think of all the dynasties that there are, the Houstons, there's Burtons, Harrises, O'Tooles. Here
Yes.
in Ireland, we have the Cusacks and the
Yes.
Brennans. But
Yeah.
honestly, I think the Carradines, you outnumber all of them. I mean, you've
We
got like
may
5 siblings in the business and
we
all your
may on some
children.
level. Well, there was David and myself and Bobby, so there's the three brothers, and then my half brother Michael. So there's four. Michael Bowen, same mother, different dads, and then Martha, my daughter, Bobby's daughter Ever. So that's six.
Um,
And my younger daughter Sorrel, she's been doing it, so that's seven. My son Cade has also made some films, so I guess you could say that that's eight. And I'm probably missing somebody here.
Yeah, yes, that's a lot. Yeah.
Yeah.
Did you encourage your children to go into the business, or did you want them to just discover their own lives?
Well, I sort of, I took the same approach that our father took with us.
Mm-hmm.
You know, do what makes you happy.
Right.
And if this is what you want to do, make bloody sure that it's the only thing you want to do.
Mm.
You know? Because there really isn't room for people who are dabbling.
Mm-hmm.
You have to take it seriously and make sure that you're committed to it.
Mm.
But my father was also somewhat practical. He said, I would also suggest that you get yourself a good liberal arts education, major in English literature, since those are the tools of what you're going to be, you know, that's the underpinning of what you're going to be doing. So I endeavored to do that. I was not successful. I went to Colorado State University, but I didn't stay. You know, within 8 months of having first gone there, I wound up in the Broadway cast of Hair. So, you know.
Yes, another iconic production.
Yes.
Yeah.
You know, but so I was basically, I took the same approach with my own kids, and Martha, she was unstoppable. I mean, from the time she was tiny, it was quite apparent that she was a performer, and it turns out quite a gifted one. So you know, she's I'm very proud of her success. You know.
Yes.
And all I ever wanted for any of them was to find some joy in life. You know, and if you can find joy in this crazy business, and it's pretty crazy, then go for it. You know, because if you do find joy, it can be magnificent, and it can be quite fulfilling. You know, it could also break your heart. And you have to be prepared for that possibility, you know, and you have to have it's so interesting because, as you well know, we actors, we have to have a vulnerability to be able to do what we do. And yet we have to have a core of iron to be able to take the slings and arrows that are going to come our way as a result of our efforts on occasion.
Yes,
it's quite a dichotomy, you know.
Yeah, that's right. The steel butterflies.
Exactly.
Yes, and what somebody else said, you need to be an actor. You need to have the soul of the poet and the skin of the rhinoceros.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And how many of us have that? You know. I'm afraid that I think I'm doing okay in the soul department. I'm not sure about the thickness of my skin. I'm not sure about the thickness of my skin. I have been wounded, and you know, and sometimes you know, and some of those moments, it's interesting as we get older and you realize, well, you survive this stuff, you know, you get past it. But it's funny how we remember things, you know. And I can remember for one performance that I gave, which was in Louis Malle's film Pretty Baby.
Oh yeah, right.
Yes, well, I got the best review and the worst review I've ever got in my life as an actor.
Oh.
I got the best review from Vincent Canby.
Okay.
He said it was the best portrait of an artist since Alec Guinness in The Horse's Mouth.
That'll do.
That'll do. And then from Stanley Kaufman in The New Republic, he referred to me as, oh yes, he referred to me as the leanest hank of ambulatory gelatin ever to globble in front of a camera.
Oh my God.
You don't forget that.
No. But
No,
let me
shame,
tell you,
shame performance.
this is extraordinary. This is extraordinary. It was Stanley Kaufman, who was my teacher at Yale, who told me to go and see Foxfire.
Wow.
So he didn't think you were all that bad.
Well, apparently not. I guess he thought I was all that bad in that movie, which was before I did Foxfire. So.
Right. Well, yeah, that's extraordinary.
Isn't that amazing? I mean, it's funny, these things, and I'm sure you have your own collection of memorable,
Sure.
but I also remember trying to live, Robert Altman, who was such a great friend and he gave two pieces of really good advice to me. The first one, he says, "Let me give you some advice, kid." I said, "What's that, Bob?" He said, "Never take advice from anybody."
Yes. Yes.
And he said, "But if you're going to take advice, let me give you this advice." He said, "If you're going to read your reviews, you got to believe the bad ones as well as you believe the good ones. Exactly. Otherwise, just don't read them. Don't believe any of it."
Exactly. I was going to ask. Do you read them at all? I mean,
I don't so much now. Sometimes I'm confronted if it's unavoidable. Usually, the friends in my life, they're kind, they're loving people, and they only make me aware of the good stuff. So occasionally I'll be sent a little something. "Hey, did you see this?" And it's a little bit of an ego boost, when you can get one of those.
Yes, sure. Yeah. Well, I think you gave great advice to your children when you said, find something that gives you joy. And I can completely understand you saying that, because in every part that I've seen you in, you seem to be so at ease. I know how much work that takes, but you also seem to be genuinely, whether you're playing a villain or a hero or a singer, there's a genuine joy and warmth about your acting. There's a quality, a consistent quality. There's a grace of your stature, which you bring to absolutely everything. And I don't think you can do that unless you're genuinely enjoying the work.
Thank you, Kate. That's very kind. I do love doing this. Listen, I'm preaching to the choir. This is when one gets the chance to make believe. Mm-hmm. We do it without thinking about it as children. Mm-hmm. And all we actors have done is we've tried to find a way to continue to be children all our lives. Yeah. And I think that there's a sweetness to that. Yeah. And especially if, I've been really, really fortunate. I've been doing this a long time now. I turned 70. I'll be 71 in August. My first job, I was 19 when I was in Hair on Broadway. Yeah. I've been really, really fortunate in that, we hear tales, we've heard stories, we know that it exists, that there can be some unhealthy psyches.
Yes. Yes.
And I've been very fortunate in that I've encountered precious few of them. Yeah. Most of the time. And it's interesting because some of the most difficult or disturbed people I've worked with, and there aren't many. On one hand, I could maybe count the times that I found it really excruciating to have to deal with this person's, whatever that is. The rest of the time, it's just a delight, because what we have all chosen to be a part of here is it's wonderfully childish.
Yes, it's storytelling.
It's storytelling. And as I said earlier, the most ancient form is the theater, and you can see, in ancient times, people standing about with a torch or some such to light someone and relate a story or tell a tale. There's something so magical about that. And the other thing that I have found is that.
And sacred too.
Sacred, absolutely. But the other thing that I found is that in my list of legends, and I feel so privileged to have this list of these extraordinary, legendary figures with whom I've had the chance to work. Every one of them was full of that grace, and a pro and helpful, and supportive, and not competitive in that way.
Mm-hmm.
They just wanted to play the play and make it better.
Yeah.
And I found that the more elevated their stature, the better they were in that regard.
That's right. My father always used to say that. He used to say the
Yeah.
best actors are usually the nicest people.
There you go.
Yeah, yeah. Well, I think we've nearly reached the end of our time.
Have we? Oh my gosh, that was so
Nearly.
painless. Thank you, Kate.
Close by. We have much more to get through, but I like that we're ending on the crucial point of storytelling.
Yes.
And I just want to say, we were talking about the sacredness of the craft of acting. It goes down to the word. In the beginning was the word, and the word was made flesh and dwelt among us in grace and truth. And I just want to thank you for the grace and the truth that you bring to every single one of your performances.
Thank you so much, Kate. This was an absolute delight.
Great. And I hope you
Really
get on
enjoyed
with the animations. Have you got to see any of them?
I've got started. I saw the first one, and I was partway through the second one on my list.
Yes.
They're magnificent. I mean, just what I've seen so far.
Great.
I mean, you warned me that the level of sophistication might surprise me, and it's really good stuff. I can't wait to finish my task and
lovely. I'm delighted to hear. Well, thank you, and thanks for letting us use your song, and thank you for your time. It's been a delight.
My pleasure, Kate. I look forward to meeting you face to face in person one day.
Yes, yeah. If America and Europe can ever, if we're allowed into each other's.
Until then. Oh, and tell me how to say something. Tell me how to say something in Gaelic in a good Irish toast. What would it be?
Well, easily sláinte. Sláinte. Good health. That's the one, really. Yes, sláinte.
Sláinte.
And Gurmila Mahaga, which is Irish for thank you.
Gurmila Bugga. Okay.
Gurmila, well, not quite Gurmila Bugga.
Gurmila
Mahagat. Mahagat. I'll send it to you.
Gurmila Mahagat. Gurmila Mahagat.
That's great. I'll send it to you.
Thank you.
Write it down phonetically.
Perfect.
Yeah. Okay. All right. Cheers. Thank you so much. Bye bye.
Bye bye.